Unemployment in the United States reaching levels not seen since the Great Depression. More than 38 million Americans out of work in a matter of weeks.
Fully expected. There's no surprise. Everybody knows that. Somebody said, oh, look at this. Well, even the Democrats aren't blaming me for that. But what I can do is I'll bring it back.
We may need to do more, and Congress may as well.
Months after unemployment reached historic lows, the coronavirus pandemic has upended the U.S. labor market, dividing lawmakers on how to save the economy.
We must think big for the people now, because if we don't, it will cost more in lives and livelihood later.
Now it's time to open back up and get things moving. When you talk about 30-some million Americans who are unemployed, that is an unbelievable number. But I think we can start the great American comeback.
Meanwhile, the Trump administration wants companies to put employees back to work.
As we safely reopen, keep in mind that fundamental to a strong economy is going to be not too much government intervention. Let the private sector do its thing.
This as labor groups advocate for increased worker protections.
When people say we want to go back to normal, our response is normal's not good enough, because normal showed us those inadequacies. We want to go back to something better.
Join us for a Bloomberg special report, America's Employment Bust. Hello and welcome. I'm Kevin Cirilli. The coronavirus pandemic has brought the U.S. economy to a standstill, causing unemployment to triple in less than 2 months. President Trump and Congress have already passed nearly $3 trillion in economic relief, including an estimated $700 billion in payroll protection funds. They say it's aimed at rescuing the country's 30 million small businesses, which make up half the U.S. economy. Washington remains gridlocked on how to chart a path forward. In this special report, we'll dig deeper into the unemployment data to see just how quickly the U.S. economy can rebound and what the new economy will look like. Plus, we'll get a first-hand account from one small business owner struggling to keep her business funded. We begin with a closer look at the federal government's response. I spoke with Labor Secretary Eugene Scalia in Washington.
This is a very, very difficult situation for the American people right now, with tens of millions who've been put out of work. But what makes it very different from, say, the Great Depression is that it doesn't result from underlying economic problems. It was a response. We've idled our economy temporarily in response to a health crisis. So I think in some ways it doesn't help to compare it to the Great Depression. We do have to remember how strong our economy was. So President Trump, Congress moved extremely quickly to provide relief like unemployment benefits, like the Paycheck Protection Program for working Americans. We're at the Labor Department working very hard to keep workers safe as they return. But the most important thing I do believe is safely reopening, as so many states are now. And as we safely reopen, keep in mind that fundamental to a strong economy is going to be not too much government intervention. Let the private sector do its thing.
And what specific indicators are you looking for as signs that the economy is getting back on track?
Well, we're watching for states as they reopen. That's a sign that people are going back to the workplace. And I'm seeing early data indicating that there's a pickup in certain economic activities. We do know that people are going back to work. I'm keeping an eye on that. I am watching these unemployment filings. They're hard to watch, hard to see, but as they slow down, we know that's a sign that fewer people are being put out of work and that things are starting to turn around.
Is the post-pandemic economy going to be dramatically different than the pre-pandemic economy?
It'll be different. We know there'll be differences. I think one will be in our supply chains and some of the economic dependencies we have. I think there's a new understanding. China. I think there's a new understanding of problems in China. Lack of candor, on top of other problems with their economy, with the lack of transparency of some of the companies in China. We made a change earlier this week with a planned investment of federal pension assets. This was going to be a change that would have resulted in federal retirees' pension money, even military people, being invested in Chinese military companies. The president directed that not go forward. I think that's part of a broader reconsideration of some of our economic relationships and a recognition of we need to strengthen American manufacturing to help protect American jobs.
You know, throughout interviewing so many different people on this, I'm struck there's this palpable economic anxiety over a second wave in the fall, and that this could come back stronger in the fall. Do you share that concern, and what are you doing and the administration doing to make sure that we don't have to go back to this in the fall?
Well, we're continuing to, again, administer the programs that the president put in place with Congress to support workers, to support businesses, like Paycheck Protection, like the unemployment benefits that have been made available. But the public health message that continues to be put out by the White House and others is very important. We know that people do need to be careful even as we do reopen. We don't want a second wave. We have to be very disciplined about that. But we can safely reopen as we bring that curve down, provided people continue to be careful.
As the administration argues reopening as an economic remedy, Democrats say more stimulus money is needed to keep American workers safe, both financially and physically. It's something House Financial Services Committee Chairwoman Maxine Waters says is crucial to rebuilding the economy. I spoke with her just after the April payrolls report.
It is remarkable, and we know that people need this unemployment money that they have coming to them. We have a problem with the states being overwhelmed with the numbers, and their systems are not prepared to handle it, but we're doing everything that we can. But in addition to that, because of unemployment, we've got to make sure that we do everything we can to ensure that people have a decent quality of life. They've got to be able to pay the rent. They've got to be able to put food on the table. They've got to be able to put gasoline in the car to go to the grocery store. And so I am working very hard. I started out early on, and I wanted direct payments to the family for $2,000 for the adults and $1,000 for the children. It got negotiated with the Senate, and it ended up in the CARES package being basically $1,200 to adults and $500 to children. But we're going to improve on that. I want to improve on that, and I'm pushing again for $2,000 for the adults and $1,000 for each child in the next package that we're about to produce. In addition to that, I have focused with Mr. Heck in my committee on what we're going to do on rental assistance. We're asking, landlords and apartment owners to place a moratorium on evictions. They're doing that in cities and states all over the country. But we certainly can't leave these small landlords in particular holding the bag. We've got to pay for it.
That's what I want to ask you about, is the rental assistance program, because right now we have an unemployment crisis in this country. How do we make sure, Chairwoman Waters, that this unemployment crisis doesn't become an eviction crisis?
Well, I'm focused on it. We have legislation. It's going to be in the next package. It's just a matter of whether or not we can get the Senate to agree to the amount. My bill with Mr. Heck is $100 billion to assist renters. $100 billion. We know that we are headed toward a crisis in this area. We know that landlords are worried about whether or not they're going to be able to make the mortgage payments on those units that they own, that the renters are in. And we have not overlooked it. I started working on this some time ago, was not able to get it into the supplemental, the emergency supplemental that we did. But I've been working with leadership. We will have something in, and it right now I've targeted $100 billion for it.
Coming up, the coronavirus pandemic could forever change the U.S. labor market. We'll discuss who's most vulnerable. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to our coronavirus special, America's Employment Bust. I'm Kevin Cirilli. The U.S. labor market has contracted to Depression-era levels, and as Americans get back to work, the post-pandemic recovery could remake the jobs market for years to come. With the unemployment rate at 14.7%, in just 2 months, the U.S. economy has swung from a 50-year unemployment low to jobless numbers not seen since the Great Depression. Labor Department numbers show the most severely affected sectors, including travel, entertainment, restaurants, and childcare, accounted for just 20% of payrolls in February, but more than half of the job losses in April. Although the pace of layoffs appears to be slowing, May jobs figures are expected to bring more bad news. As consumers' habits change, jobs related to online shopping may replace many retail positions, while demand for workers in the healthcare sector will likely remain strong in the post-pandemic economy. Bloomberg Economics is tracking the downturn and the signs of a recovery. Retail sales and consumer confidence continue to drop, signaling a slow recovery when the nation reopens, while mortgage applications and the number of airline passengers are starting to stabilize. Even as states reopen and some data shows signs of optimism, sustained weakness in May is fueling expectations that GDP will shrink this quarter by the most since the 1940s, and some service sector jobs may never fully recover from the crisis. Scientists say the virus can infect anyone, but economists are finding that the pandemic's economic impact has disproportionately hurt low-income workers and minority groups. And some are predicting that the pandemic's recovery could dramatically change the way America does business. For more on this, I spoke with Susan Lund, a partner at McKinsey & Company. She says the virus has already changed consumer behavior.
At the moment, consumers aren't spending. That when we work from home, we don't spend on pretty much anything except groceries. As the economy starts to come back, though, I think there are going to be real question marks over what the new normal will be for consumer behavior. How quickly are people going to want to go back to large sporting events or concerts or entertainment venues? To what extent will some people continue working from home? And then that changes your wardrobe and your spending patterns around food service and transportation. Another question is about the shift to digital. So what we see now, just like we're doing these interviews from home via Skype, we know that people are doing telemedicine, online learning, streaming entertainment. Right. And surveys that we've done at McKinsey suggest that a lot of that behavior may be what we call sticky, meaning it may persist. Yes, there will be some drop off when we can all go out, but some of it is likely to be a permanent shift towards digital channels.
One of the studies at McKinsey actually looked at specific states. What were some of the hardest hit states by this?
Well, we did a lot of looking at who's vulnerable in jobs. And what you find is this can be either because they're jobs in establishments that were shut down during the stay-at-home measures, or in industries where demand is just lower, like commercial air travel or manufacturing for different types of goods. The states that are hardest hit are a little bit surprising. It's really those that rely on travel and tourism, places like Nevada, to a lesser extent Florida, that saw the biggest job losses just because of the predominance of tourism and related industries in their economies.
What has the data shown us, Susan, about the hardest hit people that have been affected negatively by this economic collapse?
Yeah, what the data is very clear in showing is that it's the most vulnerable people in the population who are getting the largest economic hit. So we estimate that up to 35% of the workforce could be furloughed or lose their job or see hours cut. But 75% of those people are low income. It's disproportionately ethnic minorities.
So it's 75%.
Let me say that again.
75% of the 35% of Americans who could be furloughed or laid off are low income.
That's right. And it's predominantly ethnic minorities, people working part-time jobs, younger workers. So it's exactly the people who don't have the financial savings and cushion to support this. So that's a big worry, that we've known that growing inequality was a problem, but it looks like the impact of COVID is hurting those who can least afford to be hurt.
Restaurant workers are among the hardest hit of this downturn. Virginia Ali is the owner and co-founder of Ben's Chili Bowl, a Washington institution and an official D.C. landmark. It's been open since 1958. She explains how the crisis is impacting her business.
It is very much so the very hardest time, the uncertainty of it all. You know, we've gone through the riots and the influx of drugs and the construction of a subway system that took away the entire street for a long time with a big 65-foot hole out there. But this is unreal for me. I'll be 87 years old on my birthday, and I've never seen anything like this. And the uncertainty of it is what's so frightening. And because all these other things that we've endured wasn't really making people physically ill. Now we have physically ill people, and that's hard. It's really difficult. I don't know when we'll be able to use my place again.
I mean, this is such a historic part of Washington, D.C. Originally, it was called Black Broadway.
Yeah.
Are you worried? Are you worried about having to close down?
I'm leaving that to the next generation in terms of what we'll be able to do here. We have closed our other stores. We have more than one. This is the old original Chili Bowl. We don't have the others open at this point. We hope to be able to open them. And of course, you know, the stimulus package, we were able to apply for that. We didn't, it took us a little while, but we've recently been approved. So hopefully that will help in terms of payroll and trying to hold on to employees that we've had for so many years. I have one young lady that's been with me 44 years.
44 years.
And one that's been here 32 and one 30 and you know on.
This is their family.
It's a family affair.
Virginia, you're a small business owner.
Yeah.
What do you want big business owners to know right now about the impact, the economic impact that this is having on small businesses like Ben Chili Bowl that maybe they don't understand?
Well, you know, small business is really the heart of our country. Small businesses are the people that get into the community and become a part of the community. Big business is not that way. So I always feel like small businesses is the heart of the community. It's heart of this entire country. So we need small business. I don't know what to say to the big businesses except they're trying to swallow us all up.
Coming up, CEOs offer a mixed picture for reopening, but workers demand new protections on the job. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to our special, America's Employment Bust. I'm Kevin Cirilli. The coronavirus pandemic has touched every part of the economy, but some industries have fared better than others. This earnings season, Bloomberg Television spoke with CEOs across sectors for how they're handling the crisis.
With the $3.2 billion under the CARES Act that you mentioned, it's important to note that all that money is earmarked to our employees, and even that doesn't cover our payroll through September the 30th. At this point, I don't think an airline can be too small, if you know what I mean. So anything that we can do to reduce the consumption of resources, I think will be helpful, certainly here in the near term.
We haven't announced any furloughs. I mean, I think, one of the things that is so important now is that the environment continues to be really not predictable. And, what we're really focused on is helping our clients, what we call outmaneuver uncertainty.
We had to take action to protect the company to see us through the crisis. We had to furlough 7,000 associates, almost 30% of the company. But we were deemed essential everywhere we operated, and if you think about it, we are. All the doctors and nurses, firemen, policemen, if they had difficulty with their vehicle, it absolutely positively had to be fixed. I thank all the AutoNation employees for that. But then a drumbeat started from customers.
When you run a business, one layoff is one too many, but everybody has to adjust their businesses to the reality of what we think is coming. Both in terms of capacity, how many people will we need, but also in terms of capability. What are the focus areas in terms of skills and talents that are going to be particularly valuable as we look forward.
As CEOs make cuts to keep their companies afloat, unions are calling for greater workers' protections. I spoke with AFL-CIO President Richard Trumka about what the labor group's 12.5 million workers need to feel safe when they do return to work, and what lessons can be learned from the pandemic.
I think it's demonstrated the weakness on not only the supply chain, but in our national security.
Yeah.
It's shown how vulnerable we are as an economy to outside people, especially China. And I think the result is going to be people are looking at more insourcing right now, and you're going to see more jobs come back home because Americans can do them more effectively, more efficiently, and quite frankly, they can do them more cost effectively.
Do you think that this pandemic and the economic crisis that has spawned as a result of it has exposed the differences in terms of inequality between white-collar workers and blue-collar workers?
I think it's gone even more than just white collar, blue collar. It has exposed that difference, but it exposed a number of structural deficiencies in our economy, the lack of opportunity, the lack of health care for people of color, for women, for single parents. Those have all been exposed, and this gives us an opportunity to start addressing those structural inadequacies. And so when people say we want to go back to normal, our response is normal's not good enough, because normal showed us those inadequacies. We want to go back to something better, where the economy really does work for working people and not just that 1% at the top.
So what needs to be changed? I mean, sticking right with that line of thought, what needs to be changed in the workforce in order to one, make sure that workers feel safe when they are able to return to work, and two, to keep up with the shifting global economy?
Well, I think several things. First of all, in order to reopen the economy, one, you have to do it according to science and what's safe for workers. Workers have to be part of that process because they know that process the best. There has to be a massive increase in personal protective equipment for those that are currently working, because there are still some shortages there. And when people come back, when 50 million people come back, there'll be massive shortages unless we increase that. And then there has to be rapid, reliable testing that has to be in place so that we can isolate people and we don't have a second start. It isn't a false start to the economy only to be sent back home and cripple the economy again. When it comes to structural changes, look, there's a major imbalance of power in this country. Corporations are too strong and workers are too weak. You need to balance that power out, because we have three inequalities in our economy. You have the inequality of wages, you have the inequality of opportunity, and you have the inequality of power. And until you balance that power, you can't fix the other two inequalities. So give workers a voice on the job. Make it easier for them to join together, to bargain collectively, so they can get a fair piece of the action and a fair piece of the wealth that they produce.
That wraps up this special, America's Employment Bust. Be sure to tune in to Bloomberg Television and Radio for the latest news on the coronavirus pandemic, and visit Bloomberg.com for all the latest news and analysis 24 hours a day. I'm Kevin Cirilli. This is Bloomberg.